Hello, my name is Salma. I'm a Hong Kong-born Bangladeshi. I recently graduated from the City University of Hong Kong, and I'm currently working at the Institute for Youth Sustainability Leadership. And my scope of work includes youth education and youth empowerment, and it involves advocacy and networking for ethnic minorities.
May you please introduce yourself in Cantonese?
Hello，大家好，我叫代雅，我係一個香港出世嘅孟加拉人，最近喺城大畢業。我嘅主要工作範圍就係幫一啲待學待業嘅少數族裔青年。When I was in university, I was part of this project called Project Ethnic Minority Empowerment. In short, we call it PEME, and I was a Chief Operations Officer. And during my time there, our project was focused on mentorship, advocacy, and networking. In terms of advocacy, we did a 3-month research on EM Foundation Diploma students, and as a result, we found out that language barriers and cultural misunderstanding led to the low access in career and life development. And to talk a little bit more about mentorship, we provide mentorship programs for ethnic minority students who are in Form 5 and Form 6, and we pair them up with mentors who are in community college and university. And this is in hopes to show them that there are career opportunities and further education opportunities out there. And we are also coming from the standpoint of providing more resources and information for them, and as well as providing them emotional support, because we know that ethnic minority students might lack confidence or feel lost in their secondary school years. We created this program because we see that EM youth can be discouraged in their education life, and this is due to schools and teachers not providing enough support and resources, and sometimes students are encouraged by the teachers to just step into the workforce immediately after their public exams. And I think this is still a problem that exists in the designated schools and in the education system, where students aren't really shown what are the possibilities out there in terms of career prospects. Some students take the longer route to university. They go from foundation diploma to associate degree and then to bachelor's degree. Unfortunately, I failed my mathematics exam in my public exam, and I really thought that was the end for me, because all we were taught was to go through university with the JUPA system. The teachers didn't really provide us with adequate information and resources onto how we can, take the longer route or how to articulate to university eventually. And yeah, so that was really difficult for me because I really thought that that was the end for me and that I have to end up in the workforce so early at a young age. And I really just thought that, my dreams couldn't be actualized. We were inspired to initiate this program because we received some help during our DSE result release day. There were NGOs and social workers stationed outside our classrooms providing help because that was the only source of help that I was getting at that point. I think I was there, and then the social worker, she saw me crying. She saw that I was basically hopeless and didn't know what to do. I was just about to go home because I don't know what else I could have done. And then she told me that everybody, just goes to different universities and starts, they just line up in universities and give walk-in applications on the result release day just to secure their associate degree. And she just, she kept in contact with me throughout the whole day just to make sure, I really secured my spot. And then she also she also told me what I should bring along with me, the application form, how much money I should bring. And I was really grateful for that. So similarly, with our mentorship program, we have mentors and core team members stationed in universities and in secondary schools on the DSE result release day. We have them accompany the students to go to universities and community college to make their applications because the atmosphere can be very overwhelming. Everything is all over the place, everyone's everywhere. And we also have mentors who act as translators on that day because admission booklets are basically always in Cantonese. In terms of advocacy, we have a program called Darkroom Simulation, and our target audience are local Hong Kong students. And what we do is we give them an experience of discrimination and mistreatment that ethnic minorities face on a daily basis on public transport, in public places, in restaurants, in basically anywhere. And they get to be in our shoes for a few hours, and after the simulation, we get to have an evaluation session, and then they would come to us and tell us, we never knew that it was that bad for ethnic minorities in Hong Kong, and we didn't know that discrimination could escalate that bad in Hong Kong, and which also shows that, they gained a deeper understanding and knowledge of our culture and the things that we go through. Youth face discrimination during their school to work transition, leading to a higher unemployment rate. And I'm going to use my friend as an example. He spoke perfect Cantonese, and the thing was, he was doing an interview on the phone with a company, and the boss was very impressed and told him to come to the company next day to sign the contract. The next day he showed up, and when they saw him in person, they were like, "Oh, you're the candidate?" And then a few minutes later, they came back and said, "We already have our positions filled." In Hong Kong, most jobs require you to know and be proficient in English and Cantonese. And I know a lot of ethnic minorities that speak perfect English and are proficient in Cantonese, but when they show up to jobs or apply for jobs, there would be additional criterias. For example, how about Mandarin? Do you speak the language? Do you speak Mandarin? And then these additional qualifications will just automatically disqualify a candidate from that position. Most ethnic minorities are proficient in English, and they will apply for native English teaching jobs. And however, there are some companies or schools that specify that they want Caucasians as their teachers, or they do not want people of color to be filling those positions. And I have a friend who is of Filipino background. She was told to lie about her race to the parents and the teachers so that it would sound better. So she was told to say that she is from Hawaii. And, there are religious discriminations as well. Muslim women, they wear headscarves. Sikh male, they wear turbans. And I have a friend who has to wear the headscarves even during teaching. And the school told her to take the headscarf off because the children are getting scared. I noticed that sometimes there is a pay gap difference between ethnic minorities and local Hong Kongers. For the same job, same position, same title, same job requirement, if one is being paid $15,000, the ethnic minority is being paid $13,000. And sometimes we have to settle for less than what we deserve, not because we want to, but we have to, because at a certain point we lose our bargaining power. And then it's easier for employers to hire ethnic minorities as part-time staff because, you can skip on the remuneration, you can skip on the compensation, you can skip on the medical benefits and the MPF. Most of the time, ethnic minorities are not well aware or informed of the additional benefits that they're entitled to. It is easier for employers and bosses to get rid of them and fire them because they're on a part-time basis. My parents put me in a local kindergarten at a very young age, and that was the first time I got in touch with the language of Cantonese. And I think because I started so early and because of early integration, I started learning various dialects and languages. And I think a lot of the English and Cantonese that I learned, surprisingly, it was outside of the classroom, not from inside of the classroom. And it would be instances where I would go home, turn on the TV, watch cartoons, watch local, TV dramas, and if I ever want to learn to write Chinese characters, I would just copy the newspapers. I think throughout these lives and different stages, I think it's very important to keep continuing to integrate and connect with people of different backgrounds. For ethnic minorities to integrate into society is the language barrier. Locals are more comfortable talking to people who speak the language, and ethnic minorities tend to stick with the community that they're most comfortable with so that it's easier for them to interact because English and Cantonese may not be the mother tongue of ethnic minority individuals. Ethnic minorities were taught an elementary version of Cantonese compared to the local Chinese syllabus. And that elementary version of Cantonese was actually equivalent to local primary 1 syllabus. And at that point, we weren't really upgrading our Cantonese learning skills. And because we were in a designated school, and a designated school comprises of ethnic minority individuals, we didn't really have the environment or the stimulation of integrating into a local mainstream culture. And I think this is one of the reasons where we never really saw how Cantonese would play such an important part in our future prospects. And in my secondary school, a lot of graduates would eventually come back to teach in our school. And we are comfortable speaking our own dialects with them, and that's how we actually maintained, the communication between teachers and students, and we were more comfortable with that. And because that made us so comfortable, we didn't have an identity crisis. When I was enrolled in my secondary school, I was given 3 options to choose from: CSL, which is the Chinese as a second language, Advanced Chinese as a second language, and Traditional Chinese. And there are quite some flaws in the CSL syllabus because there are no key performance indicators and there are no staged learning objectives because the school defines the syllabus. We were taught an easier version of basically everything, so we weren't really progressing. And even though we do get a lot of fundings here and there, and I don't think that the fundings are used to its maximum potential because sometimes, we would just go on a trip to Disneyland and then they would call it Chinese learning trip. Yeah. I picked the Traditional Chinese syllabus, even though I had a lot of catching up to do because in primary school, I didn't really get in touch with Cantonese that much. And that means there were 6 years worth of syllabus that I had to catch up. And to be very honest, I failed most of my Chinese classes. And it was really difficult because, yes, on one hand, I was really upgrading my Cantonese skills and progressing, but on the other hand, I was also preparing myself for the local Chinese DSE, which was really nerve-wracking and very difficult for us. My Chinese teacher was my favorite teacher. She never gave up on us. And in my class, we were actually, 7 ethnic minority students with 1 local student, and we were all failing the classes together. And she never gave up on us because even though we weren't doing so well in her classes, she would come up with these extra curricular activities or tutorials for us after school so that we can catch up with the syllabus. And that led us to joining the Hong Kong Chinese Speech Festival, where we would recite poems from ancient Chinese history. And I think we had a lot of fun there, even though we didn't really win any awards, because usually the awards go to Band 1 school students or local school students. But we really had a lot of fun there. And I think that was one way for us to integrate into local culture. I think that I was learning something fruitful while my classmates were getting good grades in the Chinese as a second language exam, which is the GCSE and GCE. But I think that level of Cantonese is no longer helpful in tertiary education and our future career pathway. I think that the Traditional Chinese syllabus has really helped me gain more job opportunities and has really helped with my future career prospects. And I think that, knowing the language has really helped with me scoring more interview opportunities. I never really had any difficulty scoring a job, and I think it's the language playing a part. I think the HKSAR government really helps in solving some of the problems that ethnic minorities face in Hong Kong. We have more ethnic minority representation on government advisory committees, and I really think that government is really starting to listen to multiple voices. For employment, recently more ethnic minorities are hired as civil servants. Some are working as firemen, some as correctional services, and the statutory boards such as Equal Opportunities Commission, like EOC, also have ethnic minority staff. Websites created by the government, like youth.gov.hk, and the Racial Diversity Employment Program, we call it the RDEP, which was made by the Labor Department. They also provide customized employment support services for ethnic minority job seekers. There are many ethnic minority youth who support their own education, and I have friends who work part-time while studying, and because we are living in such a difficult time, and the most salary he got in a month was $400. And he pays for his own school fees, so it was really difficult for him to cope up with this situation, and because you can't really do much with that amount of money. I think that the government can really initiate a furlough scheme and provide temporary relief funds for ethnic minorities. But sometimes this amount of money might not even be able to cover some people's rent. The thing is, there are ethnic minority permanent residents who are under the CSSA scheme, which is the Comprehensive Social Security Assistance Scheme. But we should not forget the middle-class ethnic minorities who are not under the Social Security system. They're struggling as well, but just because their assets exceed a certain amount of money doesn't mean they're not struggling.
Do you have any last words for the ethnic minorities youth in Hong Kong?
When I was in high school, I continuously failed math and Cantonese. And I really was never the top student. And I felt really bad about it back then because I never made it to the principal's list. I never made it to the honors roll. But a few years later, I realized that nobody really cares about the number on your report card. I mean, that number doesn't really define who you are. I think your experiences define who you are. Never consent to give up the essence of who you are. We are from different backgrounds. We bring a different set of values and perspectives into the workforce. We should always stick to our roots and never compromise that for anything else. My favorite quote is, "One day you will leave footprints in places people never thought you would make it to. I wouldn't be where I am today without the help of my parents and without them seeing the importance of early education and integration."